Hi all, welcome to Velocity Code. Today we are starting a new series called .NET Core tutorial. So in this tutorial we'll cover .NET Core, ASP.NET Core, ASP.NET Core Web API, ASP.NET Core MVC, all these details. Okay, let's start the tutorial. So basically .NET Core is essentially an extension of .NET. Okay, so if you are coming from .NET background, you might already know that .NET is a legacy platform from Microsoft that works only on Windows platform. So this .NET Core is a upgraded version of that .NET platform. Basically an evolution to open source cross platform. All these features added into this .NET Core platform. Okay, let's dive before discussing about what exactly .NET Core, what are the features, what is ASP.NET Core, all these details. Let's go into some part of history of this .NET Core and open sourcing .NET Core, all these details. Okay, so what happened was initially with .NET Framework 1.4 was released in 2002. Okay, around 2004, Mikkel D. Ekaja, he's the creator of the Mono project. It's the first .NET open source distribution. So basically he took out the .NET framework documentation. He created his own version of .NET framework called Mono, which works on Windows as well as Mac, Linux, everything. That's kind of the first open source version of .NET. Okay, later his Mono has been acquired by a different company. They are not much interested into this Mono project. They asked him to sell off this Mono and then dissolve everything, but he rejected it, and then he created a new company called Xamarin, which is an upgraded version of that Mono framework. What is essentially does is it will more support more iOS, Android, all these supports came into this Xamarin. Okay, later Microsoft acquired Xamarin, and then he is part of Microsoft now. Okay, that's a different story, but there are two section where .NET is essentially open source, became open source. But apart from that, not exactly open source, but it became a cross platform for these two sources. But the actual open source of .NET from the Microsoft is came in, I think it came from the DLR, dynamic language runtime. That's if you remember C# dynamic keyword, that's where this dynamic language runtime came. After that we had ASP.NET Web API 2, which is also an open source. All these things, if you observe, all these things are partially open source. Like they are not few teams in the .NET framework, they made it open source, but not essentially everything open source at the time. Okay, then enter Satya Nadella. So he's the one driven this open source revolution. Okay, so he entered into Microsoft with Silverlight project. If you remember Silverlight, it's an extension, or the part of WPF. So that's where he started in journey into my .NET. Then he became a CEO. He's the CEO after Steve Ballmer. Then he driven this cloud thing. He wanted Microsoft to drive the cloud, to see the future in the cloud. Then he asked the team to make the .NET open source. Okay, so compatible with the cloud Azure. Okay, apart from that, already the ASP.NET team started a version. They are working on a version called ASP.NET vNext. Okay, it's kind of they want to make ASP.NET cross platform. So that's the goal of this vNext. Then they renamed into ASP.NET Core, and then they decide, okay, let's move everything .NET Core, entire .NET Core into cross platform, entire .NET Core into open source. That's where this thing and came, and then Microsoft acquired GitHub, which is kind of my open source revolution. So all these things help Microsoft to make the .NET Core open source, cross platform, all these things. So that's where this history of .NET Core is from. Okay, now let's if we go into detail about what exactly .NET Core. So .NET Core is a free cross-platform open source developer platform for building many kinds of application. You can build web application, you can build cross-platform Windows application or native application for the Linux or Mac OS, or you can build Android application using Xamarin. All these things will be part of the .NET Core. So .NET Core is completely rewritten platform which has the similar working nature to .NET Framework. So this .NET Core is completely written from the scratch, but it still has the similar working nature to .NET Framework, which we will discuss in the next slide. Okay, as this became a open source, it is now maintained by .NET Foundation. It's a non-profit organization from Microsoft. Okay, then this .NET Core entire thing is written in C# and C++. Most of it covered in C# and around 16 to 20% is still in C++. It's licensed under MIT and Apache. Apache 2. You can see the .NET code in the GitHub. You can go to I will attach the URL, so you can go to GitHub and you can see the .NET Core code in the GitHub. Okay, and this .NET Core is cross-platform. We already know, consistent across architectures. Now everything is a console kind of application. Everything will have a program.cs main method. That's the starting point to every application part of .NET Core. And we have wide range of applications as we discussed. We have Windows, web, and Linux, Mac, every wide range of applications. It's now modular architecture. You don't need large 7.5 GB of that .NET runtime. Now it is very lightweight and modular. It supports multiple languages. As we know, .NET Pro likes to provide a lot of options, and one of them is having support to multiple languages. Right now Microsoft by default supports C#, F#, VB, and also Visual Studio supports Python and few different other languages. Okay, so this is all about .NET Core. Let's say if we discuss about .NET Core architecture, so you can find the similarity with the .NET also. So .NET Core will also have the CLR, it will also have the base class library, it have the C# compiler. So the new thing will be CLI tools. Okay, basically CLI tools is the command line interface where you can interact with the .NET using the command lines. You can build, you can run, you can deploy everything from the command line. Okay, then the Roslyn is the language compiler for the C# and Visual Basic. Earlier we used to have the CSC, C# compiler, but that CSC is completely written in C++. Then Microsoft team decided to write it in C#. That's the code name for that project. Roslyn is the code name for that language compiler for C#. So that's also open source. It's available in GitHub. You can refer. CoreFX is a set of framework libraries. These are all similar to base class library which you used to have in the .NET legacy framework. And then Core CLR is the JIT based common language runtime. It's also same as the CLR, but it's now upgraded. It's now more included lightweight modular version of CLR. It's also open source. You can refer the runtime of that .NET Core from the GitHub to see how it works, how it runs, how it converts into machine code. Everything will be there in that code. Okay, now so this is all about .NET Core. And then why .NET Core? Why to choose .NET Core? So what are the advantages of .NET Core? So there are I want to name a few, but these are all them we can list out. So support for multiple platforms, right? .NET Core supports multiple platforms now because it's becoming cross-platform. It is very fast, lightweight. It has the inbuilt dependency injection, that means IOC containability, integration with modern UI frameworks such as Angular, React, all these things. Now it is easy to host, okay, using different like IaaS. We can host it in Nginx, we can host it in Apache. So all these are all possible now. Code sharing, you can share the code using DLLs. It works the same way as it is. Side-by-side app versioning, you can have .NET Core 3.1, .NET 5, .NET 6, everything side-by-side in a single mission. Now smaller deployment footprint, you don't need all those DLLs now. Whatever that are required in your project, those only you need to deploy into that client deployable mission. So these are all the advantages of .NET Core, so that we can choose .NET Core over the other platforms. Okay, let's if we go into current available versions of .NET Core. The first .NET Core version was released in 2016, June 27th, with Visual Studio 2015. Okay, so that's where the .NET initial release was happened. At the same time, we have .NET Core 7.5. So it's all the initial release were very buggy. There are a lot of issues with the code, and Microsoft team, they are trying to fix it as early as possible. So that's why you will see the .NET Core 1.1 was released in at the same year, November 18th, and then .NET Core 2.0 was released in 2017, and then 2018 we have .NET Core 2.1 and 2.2. So all these fast paced, they are all there are some issues. A lot of components and a lot of libraries were not migrated to .NET Core. All this because it's not, they are not using anything from the .NET. Everything is rewritten, so it is taking time to convert everything. But the first breakthrough came from 2019 release of .NET Core version 3.0. So that's where we have lots of part of the particularly ASP.NET Core was migrated, and that's where companies started to take seriously about .NET Core, and then a lot of companies started to migrate into .NET Core 3.0. But .NET Core 3.0 was not long-term supported. Then we have the .NET Core 3.1, which is an LTS version. It is part of the Visual Studio 2019. So that's where the I think even I started converting my application into .NET Core 3.1. So .NET Core 3.1 was the major version of .NET which was released in 2019. After .NET Core 3.1, they have the problem with numbering. Okay, now we have already .NET 4.8, which is a parallel version of this .NET framework, that's also available. And then after .NET Core 3.1, we need to release they need to release the .NET Core 4.1 or 4.x something. So they decided, okay, let's not confuse too much. Okay, let's unify everything, unify everything into one .NET. Take some features from the .NET and then merge it into .NET Core and make everything as a single .NET. Okay, so that's where this new version started forming, and now they're all more planned. Okay, so in November 2019 we have .NET Core 3.1 LTS version, and as 1 year after, November 2020, we have .NET 5.0. This is the first unified version of .NET. Okay, this is a current release which doesn't have support, which doesn't have long-term support. If you see LTS version, they support up to 3 years. The GA or the current versions will support up to 18 months, like 1.5 year. Okay, then we have .NET 6.0, which is released in November 2021, this is also a LTS version. So most of the companies will now started to migrate from .NET Core 3.1 to directly .NET Core 6.0. So they are skipping .NET 5.0, but .NET 5.0 is the first .NET which doesn't have core, but the ASP.NET still has the core. We will discuss why it still has that core extension, but from the .NET point of view, we are not going to see the core extension going forward in the .NET world. Okay, and in that November 2022 they promised to release .NET 7.0, and then they have this plan, like every year we need to release a new version of .NET, and along with this .NET they will be releasing a C# new version. Right now we have C# 10.0 along with .NET 6.0. Now along with .NET 7.0 they will release a C# 11.0. So that's how the plan from the Microsoft team. They have this schedule announced right now. Okay, so this is all about .NET and .NET Core and how it works, everything. Now in the next tutorial we'll be discussing about ASP.NET Core, how it is started, everything. Okay, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Thank you.